talking about
Yes.
available for them to work with.
Correct.
You bet.
Well, and that ARP money is still there. I mean, he said short term, and we do have a
Yeah.
time limit
Yeah.
on our ARP money,
Well, no,
but it can be invested until the last minute
Yeah.
to some degree.
But do we want to use?
Well, I do think that,
Do we want to use our revenues? This is from general fund.
I do think that,
She mentioned ARP, Marion.
well,
We're talking about from general funds.
you're just talking about the money that from
Oh.
ARPA.
General.
Yeah, I was
The
just
ARPA,
mentioning ARP
the
could be
additional
invested.
$22 million that we
Oh.
got in from ARPA, that's gonna be there until we spend it.
Correct.
Right.
But we
So
get to
that's-
keep the interest off of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you're talking potential to work out to maturities if you feel like interest rates are going down, when typically when the yield curve gets inverted, short-term rates are longer than, or are higher than long-term rates. You start, traditional portfolio theory says you start lengthening your maturities because that's an indication that rates are gonna turn on the short end. And that money is out there, you know, we have to have it scheduled for when we're gonna spend it, but
Correct.
that's a lot longer term
Than a day.
money
Than a
to
day.
look at.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was,
Anything else? Any other questions?
your budget has been adjusted.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, and my thought would be is I think you're gonna find a good working relationship with variable fee type
Yes.
of people, because it's based on the better we do,
That's
the
and that's
better
what we're
we do
leaning
for
on.
you, the more money we get for you to be able to do
Correct.
things. And I really agree with the idea of getting this in place and involved before we go out for a depository.
Correct.
Because right now, we're kind of at a little bit of at odds with our depository
Yep.
as far as that goes. But
Yep.
if they're only paying us 5 beeps, then
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that.
Correct. It's like the more we can get, not away from them, but the more we can get at
Yeah.
a better yield.
Or have the, you know, or tell them, yeah, if you're really, I mean, this is maybe kind of anecdotal, but is it still as difficult to find people that, even with use of letters of credit, is it still as difficult to find people that want depository business because of the collateralization requirements?
From what has been talked about in the past year, yes,
Okay.
because of collateralization.
Because of the interest environment that there is?
Yeah.
Okay, they can't make enough money to make the spread.
Correct.
And collateralize the
Yeah, and
deposits.
that could be changing, but
Okay.
Okay,
thank y'all.
we will move on to number 3, is presentation and discussion of the following Brazos County Department and offices that have proposed budget requests for FY 22-23. A is information technology.
Good afternoon, Judge and Commissioners. Eric Caldwell with Information Technology.
Thank you.
Well, the green light came on before and now it's not on, so I haven't checked.
Okay. This year we turned in 7 capital improvements requests for FY '23. The first of which was a request to replace 4 switches, iSCSI switches. These 4 switches are 8 years old and 10 years old. They're no longer being sold, and they will no longer be supported in FY '23. They are part of our core infrastructure, and without us being able to get support on those things, it's time that we replace those. The second request, also a priority 1 request, was for an increase in our ability to replicate the case media data for the county attorney and the district attorney. This is the digital evidence that you hear so much about that continues to grow and grow and grow. And it has outgrown our ability to replicate this stuff for redundancy. We would need this storage space to replicate this data to prevent data loss, provided that we don't enter into a contract for the Axon Attorney Premier package. I know that Charles in purchasing and others have been working to amend the contract for the Axon product to buy into the Attorney Premier package. If that is successful, and Charles can speak to that more, but having spoken to him about this, I guess yesterday, we're hoping that that will be on Commissioner's Court maybe next week or the following week. If that goes through, then this particular request will not be needed. We can pull this request off. So that's kind of a roundabout way of advocating for that Attorney Premier package. Was there a question?
Yeah, I do. Okay, so
Okay.
this, the iSalon replication increase, is that evidence dot, oh yeah, I know, we're gonna get back to my drawing.
Yeah.
So, we had budgeted for evidence.com, but this is a step up? Or can anybody, I know.
This is in effect adding to the evidence.com so that we can move all of the county attorneys and district attorneys' digital evidence off of our local storage. If you remember the pie chart that I
Cloud.
drew for you,
Mhm.
and I showed you that we've got one little sliver of everything else, and the majority of
Majority
that
of it.
pie is the case media data for the prosecutor's offices.
Secure share, right, currently?
And Secure Share is the conduit that
Okay.
we manage that data through, that's correct. So yes, if this contract extension is entered into, then we're gonna take that huge piece of that pie, all of that data storage, and we're gonna push it up into the cloud.
So is it budgeted already? What, as part of the Axon, or no? Or are we just hoping to squeeze some stuff out of the vendor?
I'm gonna defer to Charles and Nina on that. I know
And
that,
she knows
I know
I
that
don't
Trevor
need
has
to.
been involved in this. Unfortunately, Trevor couldn't be here today.
I think we increased it to include the DA and the county attorney amount, for next year. I just don't know the exact amount, so I have in my notes to double check to make sure we do have that included for next year if this.
If it's successful?
Yes.
Yeah.
Iceland goes away.
I think it is.
I think so too, because I noticed it did increase. I just want to make sure we are covered.
So do we have this?
Yep.
So it's an either or, and we won't know until, who knows when?
This contract goes.
Until
A couple
the
of weeks?
We're waiting on
Okay.
we're waiting on the vendor to get back. Our hope is that if we're contracting right now, that we would have the money right now to be able to perfect that.
Do we have the money right?
No, we won't have to add the money for right now.
So it'd have to come out of contingency, which is fine. I'm just making sure I understand, because we won't talk about it again and then it'll all be crazy.
We have some left over, just don't know what the amount is. I don't know how much the increase is gonna be. Cause the full contract didn't use the full amount that was budgeted for it.
Okay.
I just
We
don't
just
know
don't know
if
if the difference is gonna be enough.
Correct.
Or, okay.
So we got, so if I understand correctly, we got some of the money in this year's budget, maybe.
Maybe.
We got some of the money, don't know if it's enough. We won't know until the vendor gets back with us.
Okay.
And if the vendor gets back with us and we're successful, we will not need $45,300 in next year's budget for the county attorney, district attorney, media. I'm trying to take away your choices. No, you can't fund that. You see what I'm saying? We're just trying to make sure we understand so we don't put it in the budget.
Okay. Our third request was production server refresh. This is just an ongoing refresh of the production servers in our data center. We intend to replace 3 public-facing servers in FY '23. Those public-facing servers, they provide services like the BC Jury, Justice Web, patrol car connectivity, the digital evidence management transfer we were just talking about, secure share. And then in also in FY '23, we are going to be replacing 3 Odyssey servers. That is, if we cannot virtualize them. We are working right now with Tyler Technologies to determine whether or not we can virtualize those existing Odyssey servers. If we can virtualize those servers, then we do not need to replace the physical hardware. And so you'll see highlighted in green there in your packet that if we can virtualize those servers, then we don't need to replace them in FY '23, saving us about $40,000. Now at this point, I would say leave that $40,000 for those 3 servers in there, unless and until we know from Tyler Technologies. Until we learn from Tyler Technologies that we in fact can virtualize them, we need to leave them in there. Okay.
So the 108,000 that you're requesting, that includes that $40,000?
Oh yeah, I rounded it
Okay.
up. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
I rounded it up.
Doesn't include 24's request, right?
It does not. No. So for FY '24, we need to replace 3 servers out there at the tax office, and then 5 servers in various remote county offices.
And that would be another
Brazos Center. Well, in FY '24, we need to replace another $63,000 worth. Yeah. Rounded up to 64. And then our 4th priority 1 request is to replace mobile data terminals in patrol vehicles. Like the rest of our computer equipment, we have to replace these periodically to keep them fresh. And so we intend to replace 20 aging MDTs and docks in FY '23. Sorry, I didn't advance. And then in FY '24, we're going to replace another 20, and then in 25, 26, and 27, we will replace respectively 15, 15, and 16. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to equalize the number of MDTs that we have to replace each year so that there's not a giant sticker shock. At one point, not too long ago in the past, we were on a kind of a wild cyclical swing in costs associated with replacing this equipment. So we've been trying to balance this stuff out and equalize the cost each year. And this is our 5-year plan to achieve that, or pretty close to achieving that with these MDTs.
What is the average for one MDT to last? Every 5 years or replace it 3 years?
We try to replace them every 4 years.
So keep
Is
that
that,
in
wait a minute,
mind
is
that
that
these
right,
are
Bill? Every
estimates.
4 or every 5?
MDTs,
MDTs, I think, yeah, they're every 5.
So whatever new vehicles y'all agreed to this year, regarding for 23, that from patrol, constables, DAs, whoever has MDT, you can add that in 5 years to that cost. So whatever we add new to our fleet that has an MDT, like I stated, your patrol, any of the jail constables will add to the fleet to be replaced come here around 27, 28. So it's additional continuous cost that we'll have to keep in mind.
So, figure on 20 per year.
Well, to Nina's point, as we grow the fleet, both fleet of patrol vehicles as well as fleet of the computers that go into those vehicles, the number each year that we have to replace will grow as well. So.
And they're not cheap. I think they're averaging 5,000-6,000 each.
You know, with the docks, they were over 5,000 a piece Without the docks, I think they are just under 5,000 apiece. Now that is with that's with a 15% markup, which was recommended to us by the manufacturer Panasonic, just based on market conditions nowadays. They are recommending that the number they gave us, we mark up by 15%, because by the time we get around to buying them, that may be the going price. And of course, that goes up year after year after year. So they may be under $5,000 right now. We may be able to go out as soon as the ink dries on the budget, and we're told to go out and purchase them early, so we can go ahead and get on the waiting list. Given the long ship time, they may be under 5,000, but who knows?
And the docking stations will vary each year due to all the different types of vehicles we have. And so that will fluctuate the cost as well. It's not, each docking station is different to each vehicle.
They can be. Now, I will say that the reason we're replacing 20 docking stations for FY23, but not for the remaining years, is because the remaining vehicles, the docking stations that are already in the remaining vehicles, 50, 66 vehicles, if I did my math right, those are still good docking stations. So we can continue buying replacement MDTs to go into those docking stations, but we still have 20 aging docking stations that have to go away because the new MDTs don't fit those old docking stations. So
Can't hear you, Charles.
yes, it can get convoluted moving from vehicle to vehicle.
Can you come to the mic, Charles?
You go ahead.
We can't hear you.
They don't know what they meant.
Eric can say it more eloquently, but we're going from one vehicle to another type of vehicle. So we may be going from a Charger to a Tahoe or a Ford Bronco or whatever it was that that we started implementing in SO and the constables. So.
Thank you.
Well, to clarify, as you change vehicles, not only do the docking stations are specific in part to the MDT, as well as to the mounting hardware that has to go into the vehicle. So if you go from a Charger to a Tahoe, the hardware, it's a metal post and bolts. That hardware sometimes has to change when you go from one type of vehicle to a different type of vehicle. And so when that hardware changes, sometimes the docking station has to change as well. So it's, like I said, it can get convoluted. Trying to standardize on vehicles and the equipment that goes into them is challenging. Moving on then at priority 2, multi-factor authentication. This is actually a continuation of a project that we started actually 7 years ago or so, because of legislative requirements, actually CJIS requirements. We had to install multi-factor authentication into patrol vehicles. Then in FY21, we installed multi-factor authentication in IT, and then we've since installed it in elections, and we've since changed to a new type of multi-factor authentication called Duo. And what we're wanting to do with this capital improvements request is to finish deploying that multi-factor authentication countywide. Multi-factor authentication, if you don't know what that is, it's rather than just your username and password, something that you know, it's also something that you have or something that you are. A fingerprint, a retinal scan, an ID badge. So we want to deploy this countywide, and I will say that the cybersecurity incidents that we have had of late could have been partially prevented with the multi-factor authentication being rolled out countywide. You may be aware of email phishing attacks. They caught up some people, and some people went to websites and entered in usernames and passwords. The nefarious actors were then able to turn around and use those username and passwords and log into other systems. If multi-factor authentication had already been deployed countywide, those actors could not have done that. And so this is something that we strongly advocate. And at the time we turned it in, it was a priority 2, but given the events of late, I would like to reclassify that to priority 1, and I think you would agree.
How many
That's-
pages are left?
Of this presentation?
That's what I was
thinking. How many pages are left to make sure the whole county
Well, this
is,
would be the only remaining phase.
so the
Yeah.
whole county will be covered?
Right.
If this is great.
Right. So about 840 employees or so, including the county judge and the commissioners and the auditor and the budget officer. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'll be upfront with you. It can be a pain sometimes, but it is a whole lot less painful to, authenticate twice than to get caught up in something like we've just gotten caught up in.
The last
It's priority
The last
one.
fishing attempt, that was pretty sly.
Well,
It
We-
had
you know,
all the
I will say
appearances
that
of
it's
being internal. Yeah.
it is always an ongoing battle,
Yep.
and it always will be.
All I'm gonna say is I promise I've gotten somebody posing as one of y'all asking me to change your direct deposit. I don't click on it, but I guarantee I've gotten them. I know I've got them for the judge. I had to call sheriff one time. You telling me to do something? No. Okay.
All else fails
I think for a
communicate.
while the judge was asking us to buy him some credit cards.
Gift cards. That's what-
Gift cards. Gift cards, I'm sorry, gift cards.
Make it alphabetical, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he called me by my first name.
Are there any other questions about that? All right,
The first
moving
one
on
is
then.
commissioners.
Our 6th request is for Sis Albert monitoring. This is another tool, would be another tool in our toolbox to help prevent cyber attacks. It's effectively a network security monitoring and management system. It's based on a technology known as intrusion detection. In effect, what we would do is we'd wind up buying a single piece of hardware, a little server, just over $5,000, and then we would contract with the Center for Internet Security to monitor traffic on our network, looking for any kind of nefarious activity. We already have a similar service through Texas A&M University. They are already doing network monitoring, but this is a different type of network monitoring. And we believe it's worth the money, so we turned it in as a request. Billy, is there anything
And
you'd like
it's
to add to that?
Priority 3, right?
Priority 3, we recognize that, money is limited, and we, as we have always done, we've tried to prioritize our requests, so that you can.
Well, with the happenings in cyberspace, I'm questioning if we don't want to prioritize that.
Well, the hardware
I mean,
itself,
reprioritize.
just over $5,000, is something that we would wind up having to replace periodically, not every 5 years. We could probably drive that out much further, like our servers, other servers. But it's the $13,800 a year for the monitoring service, that adds up over time.
Mhm.
But over 5 years, it's still only, quote unquote, only $74,000 over 5 years. And so it may be something that y'all want to take a very close look at.
I think we should reprioritize it, 1.
And then the last request is actually no longer needed. We were asking for a sandbox environment for NetSuite customers. But basically, once we decided to give up on GovSense. We no longer needed that. So I'm asking that we pull that request altogether. Just drop it. Okay?
Well, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. District Attorney, Jarvis.
So, real quick, we have, our request is for a vehicle. We had, the Commissioners Court gave us an investigator last year. We did not ask
Talking
for,
to Mike.
sorry. The Commissioners Court gave us an investigator last year, a fifth investigator for CPS and juvenile. However, that person, we did not ask for a vehicle at that time. The vehicle that he's in right now is over 100,000 miles. They usually switch them out at 80,000 miles. It has hail damage, and so we've been working with Ken at Fleet to try to make sure we have a vehicle. That's why we put it in capital, so it's to be about 33,000.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, it'll be 33,000 for the vehicle, Chevy Traverse. The vehicle's necessary. It's time to change them out, and so that's the only request that we have for capital. We were talking before with the auditor's office about handheld radios. We want to bring that up and talk about that right now. We currently do not. We usually have radios in our vehicles that are mounted in the vehicles. We were talking whether or not handheld radios or mounted radios would be better. Obviously, we'd love to have both, but if we can get away with a handheld radio there, which is cheaper. So we would go with the handheld radio for the fifth vehicle.
What's the cost of the handheld?
The cost of the
The
handheld
total was 19.
19.
For one, it's between $1,500 and $1,900, which still comes with a annual subscription to our BB wax with the cog. Now for the in-car radio, it's going to be about $3,000-$4,000 for the in-car radio.
I think so.
So it's a big difference, but to have two, it's an ongoing cost that we will have to continue replacing.
We need a radio just because our investigators are out in the field, and so if something happens that's near them, they have no idea. So it's important for them to have it, especially if they're inside a house talking with witnesses, talking with victims. So they need to know, and they can respond to help and aid other law enforcement agencies across Brazos County. So that's one reason why that's there.
We don't know when the next radio upgrade will happen.
Right.
The DA's cars currently have radios in them, except for the requested new one. The cost for the requested new one does or does not include them.
The $33,000 does not
Not
include
include that.
the in-car radio.
That's
But
just
these
a
has
car.
So it's like
handheld.
moving away from in-car radios in the DA's office as the cars are replaced, and
To
they would
handhelds.
just have handhelds. The budget office is responsible for that efficiency thing. And so we were considering that, and obviously other people have other opinions, just considering that the handheld radios for the DA's investigators and the county attorney's investigators would serve them for their purposes,
You bet.
because they're not in the cars all the time. And that
Have
way
them
they
with them
have
all time.
access and communication wherever they're at, in the car, out of the car, in the office, versus other departments that need them in the patrol cars.
Right.
Cars. So we just asked Jarvis if, I didn't know if all the his cars had radios.
Yes.
Turns out they do.
They do. Except the one that's
Except-
coming up, but we can get away with the handheld radios. So I've talked with my investigators. We can do the handheld radios. That'll work for us.
So we will not replace theirs as they go out. Unfortunately, none of the people that need to know that are in here. Ken. Jarvis, what are you going to do if we can't get you a car?
If we don't have a car, well, then it's going to be a lot more service. I know I was talking to Commissioner Cawley a little bit before about picking up our victims and witnesses and putting them on Greyhound. I don't think that's really good for
Amtrak.
the babies
Or
and the
Amtrak.
Amtrak.
Pardon me, but you didn't take my recommendation.
I did. Oh, I did not. I said that
No,
would be a
you
bad
didn't.
recommendation.
In fact, he rejected it out of hand.
So it's important for us only because because we're in trial every 2 weeks, we are picking up witnesses and victims all the time from airports, because they're flying in, because we are a transient population, so we need the vehicles to go get people, to go talk to individuals. So our investigators are always moving. So it's hugely important for us to have a vehicle that works.
But we might not be
I
able to
do
get
have
them.
a question.
That's true. And we
Okay,
have a
so
vehicle. We would
I
still
mean-
be in that particular vehicle. We'll,
Okay,
we'll
so
ride
you're
it
willing
until
to
it
die
till
on
it
the
drops.
spot,
But
okay.
we would, as soon as they start up production, we would really like to have
We've
one.
tried to order.
Yeah.
I do have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
How, have you considered Zoom?
We can do Zoom except for trials, because in the statute, the confrontation clause of the Constitution does not allow us to do this via Zoom except in very limited situations. For example, the Ninth Court of Appeals out of Beaumont, Montgomery County, had a case where a crime scene investigator was in Iraq.
Mhm.
And so the court allowed it in that particular situation because he had
He
re-enlisted in the military. Otherwise, unless the defense attorney agrees,
Mhm.
we cannot use Zoom for our meetings. Now, we currently use Zoom for many of our witness meetings, but some of our witnesses do not have phones or internet access, so we have to go do that in person.
Okay, well, just thinking
No.
outside the box.
So we utilize our Zooms and Teams, Microsoft Teams, in order to set up a lot of our witness meetings, especially when they're out of state. So that helps us in those cases.
All right, thank you, but we're not going to what's that? Not
Philadelphia?
Yeah, we're not doing that again, right?
We're not going, to the Philippines.
Philippines.
No, we are not going to the Philippines.
Okay.
We were actually trying to save money on that
Right,
trip,
right.
as
Go to
opposed to
Hawaii
bringing all
instead.
those the Filipino nationals here for the
Okay.
trial. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, defense decided to bring them here anyway. So, anyway, thank y'all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, George. Sheriff's Office Admin, Courthouse Security.
I need to see that.
Good afternoon, Judge, Commissioners. I just want to take a minute before we get into the presentation and just say thank you again for this collaborative process. It's been a pleasure to work with Katie and Nina, working through the details and trying to put this together. Really have enjoyed working through the process this year. We have a number of items for your consideration today. Some of those items are more immediate. Some are things to think about for the future so that we can plan and think about debt service rates and things like that. And so just I'll turn it over to Paul and to our Chief Martinez and Lieutenant Bellingeri for each of the two divisions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Judge, Commissioners. Again, it's a pleasure to be able to present the capital portion of our budget. We have the remote. Try not to take up too much of your time. I know it's been a long day, so I'll try to breeze through this as quick as possible. First thing that we have here is number 76 is the regional armored rescue vehicle. We have gone into partnership with the 4 agencies in Brazos County, that being College Station Police Department, the Bryan Police Department, the University Police Department, and then, of course, the Sheriff's Office. Splitting the cost, College Station has carried the load of this project, and if granted, the vehicle will be maintained at the College Station Police Department. I'd like to talk a little bit about the required or necessary requirement for this rescue vehicle. What I'll refer to as high priority responses that our specialized divisions like the SWAT team respond to. There's a lack of hard cover for our officers when they're responding to these types of situations. To address a situation safely and efficiently, you typically have to have 2 of these vehicles, one for the front and one for the rear. Right now, we currently have one vehicle that's housed at the Bryan Police Department. Whenever a situation arises, we have to reach out to other agencies, and the nearest one is Washington County, and utilize their resource so we can safely execute our mission. If this is granted, then we'll have 2 here in the Brazos County area to assist our specialized divisions. Any questions?
Has an ILA been passed to court yet, or we're still working on that?
Still work in progress.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about Lexapol. This was granted to us last year. It's a policy management software. We're right in the middle of the implementation process. All we are asking is the remaining funds be rolled over. Purchasing was gracious enough to catch this, and Lexapol wanted all the money up front, but we decided not to do that, and we will pay the remaining balance upon completion. The administration building expansion. So I'd like to talk about a little bit what the sheriff hit on is that let's plan for the future. I know in the past couple of budgets we've talked about a training facility, and I'm going to bring it up again because we still encounter the same situations that we talked about the previous 2 years. Most recently, last month, we hosted a 40-hour hostage negotiation class here at the sheriff's office, which brought in agencies from throughout the state of Texas. We had a very high number that turned out for this training, and the sheriff and I had the opportunity to go in there and visit with those folks on their first day of training. And I will speak for myself that in looking into our current training room, it was very crowded. You had people in there shoulder to shoulder, and it just didn't make for a great training environment. It seems like we're constantly coming up with this issue. But I'd like to talk about the sheriff's office in itself also, is the fact that this sheriff's office was designed and created, and I believe we moved in 2007. So we're hitting that 15-year mark that we've been in this sheriff's office. And as we talked about in our previous presentation, we talked about growth within the community and the population. And what comes with that is that the agencies have to adapt to our community, and that comes with internal growth also. And we are getting pretty close that we're running out of space. And so we need to think about the future. And so what we would ask that there would be a, what we call funding for an architectural program and design. So in essence, if this expansion would cost, let's say 2.5 million, typically for a program like this would be from 7 to 10% to have somebody come in and talk about what's needed for the expansion. Would ask that maybe $200,000 be provided to start looking into the future for the sheriff's office. Number 81 is the command center upgrade. Currently, we have 3 of these smart boards that are in existence. This is the second year that we've asked for this request. These smart boards can no longer be serviced by IT department. I don't know of any other office in the county that still utilizes these. Everybody's changed into the large 85-inch TV monitors is what I'll refer to them as. So we're asking for the 3 that we have be replaced. We're also asking for 3 additional 55-inch TVs to be placed strategically throughout the sheriff's office. Information sharing in the sheriff's office is very important, and in order to do that, we have to communicate. We can utilize email, but we know how that works sometimes. But if we can be more visual in what we see, we can showcase the important things like wanted subjects, stolen vehicles, caution bolos, and also showcase the positive things that your people do within the agency. And if those are constantly on loop with it throughout the agency, I think it's a benefit to everybody. So again, this is the second year that we've asked for this request, and IT has told us that they cannot service these any longer.
Going back to the TVs, is there a way that we could do a push notification for Brazos County employees from IT to hit our county cell phones regarding things like that? Or just to the SO deputy patrol?
I'm sure with the technology that's
Amber Alert.
available that there probably is some type of technology out there, but I'm just not familiar with it.
Okay, purchasing says maybe, or yes, maybe with what we have for our county cell phones. That'd be kind of interesting, and you know, if this isn't approved, you know, would the cost be the same? At least everybody gets it, or everybody that needs to get that
Correct.
information has it, especially for the deputies patrol, law enforcement.
would you refresh my memory? Why is the command center upgrade important? I mean, you said no one around us has that.
This type of system is what I mean. So this is important. This particular unit right here is actually up in the sheriff's command center or conference room. It's right next to his office.
Okay.
We have another one that is actually in the CID conference room that is utilized.
So a monitor, a TV monitor wouldn't serve the same purpose?
Yes, ma'am, it would.
It
And that's what
would.
would essentially would replace this, because these cannot be serviced any longer.
Right. So we could use TV monitors?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what you're suggesting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions? Electronic citation writers. This is something that we had put into the operational portion, but I'm willing to talk a little bit about it and just talk about the pros that we have here. Essentially, this would give us 40 licenses and 32 printers. As far as I know, we are the only agency right now that don't utilize electronic citation writers. We are still using the old school carbon copy citations and warnings. Press hard. You have to get through 3 or 4 copies. We're far behind in the technology. So we've often been compared to doctors and prescriptions. If you ever seen the writing on prescriptions and if you ever seen the writing on a citation, we're really creating more work for ourselves when our clerks have to go and try to decipher these things. But that's not the only benefit. There's other benefits, and the one that's really important to me is officer safety. So hopefully nobody here has been a victim of a citation, but if you notice that the officer, when he has to go back to fill out his ticket, 80% of the time he's spent with his head down, not being aware of his surroundings, filling out these citations. The electronic ticket writers, nowadays, everybody's driver's license has a barcode. You swipe it, it inputs all the data into the citation, and all they have to do is hit a button. It gets the officer back on the street faster, gets the violator back on the street faster, and I think it's a great benefit for us. Another thing I want to talk about is streamlining. Right now, our deputies have to go back to the office and do a PC complaint that goes straight to the JPs. With this existing system here that's being utilized by, I believe, the constables, they hit the button, it goes straight to the JPs. Very efficient.
And how much are they?
It's $57,564 one-time fee, and then it's $8,960 recurring fees.
And we need how many?
That's going to get us 40
32?
licenses, 40 licenses,
Oh, 40.
and then 32 printers. And what I failed to mention is what we do not need. If you look onto the right of the printer there, that is almost the equivalent of our cell phones that the county provides for us.
Yeah.
We can just put an app on that cell phone and utilize our county phones to do the same thing that will do, which will save us money.
So,
So the ticket writers that have been bought by the JP Tech funds for the constables are about $1,500 a piece.
yeah.
That one-time fee, that's for all 40
Plus printers.
plus printers. So do we know how much? Do we know how much it is a piece?
So, but he just said the phones could be adapted.
Yes. What I was going to
So
point out
how-
is that this is an app
That's less
instead of
per-
the individual
Right.
ticket
Ticket
writers.
writers.
Yes.
That's less per.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. That's it.
Okay.
I'm trying to get it out.
That's significantly less per.
Yeah.
Once you throw the printers in.
And do
I don't
we
know
ha-
if the other electeds will agree.
I wonder how often would we have to replace the app, though? How durable are the apps?
On the app, hopefully it'd just be just a regular update, like
Yeah.
a push update.
Just
that they
program
would do.
updates, just like the cell phone itself.
Now for the printers
So
and
there's,
chart. Go ahead, I'm
would
sorry.
there be a charge for the upper? No? Okay.
That would be the recurring
Okay.
fees.
Okay. Just trying to get a
Yes,
full
ma'am.
picture of the cost and
Understand?
the savings.
We were excited about an app
Yeah.
instead of, yeah.
Now for the printers, charges, and Cradle, I think the cost came up to be close to $25,000, and the rest would go into. It was going to be the one-time cost, I believe. The licenses.
Correct, and that's all the equipment that would be necessary to install the printers also in the vehicles.
I think
So
I'd
you-
like to see that improvement made.
So do you have any seizure money that maybe could be used to buy these?
I don't know.
Yes, you have seizure money. Sorry.
I don't.
Yeah, you do.
And I may not know the
Yeah.
distinction. Seizure money versus crime fund?
Right. Money that was seized and awarded to the sheriff's office is in Fund 25,000, and we just did the budget, and here she goes.
So
On
we-
how much is in there,
We have that account.
expenses. Go down, sheriff's has got 23,000.
So you could take it, have this done out of that.
Well, half. I know.
23,000. And we could take care of the rest.
The thought being that if you didn't know you had it, let's spend it.
Okay.
Please.
Sorry.
help
Something
us
we can
out.
venture down.
Okay.
But I think they should have the upgrades. For sure.
I get it. Okay. Any other questions on the citation riders?
So the app goes on the phone?
Yes, ma'am.
And it talks to the machine?
Yes, ma'am.
And,
Another benefit to that county-issued cell phone that you could
and
utilize.
it's compatible to the printer.
Yes, ma'am.
And we
Now,
could-
there were about 8 people that didn't get printers. What, would they be administrators? Is that
Correct.
what
There's
you-
specialized divisions that they would be required to
Okay.
share.
Okay.
And this does the probable cause and complaint at the same time, doesn't it?
Yes, and we don't have to go back to the office to type out.
I'm thinking we might expand it to DPS.
If we could.
Yeah.
It would save
Tell me one more time.
Well, DPS is,
DPS.
they utilize those already.
They use it? Okay.
And
So our clerk out at DPS should be utilizing this already?
They should. I've seen them in the cars.
So, I don't know what.
Is this X-ray machine for
The courthouse.
Courthouse?
Courthouse security, the existing machine that we have is going to hit the 11-year mark. These are only good for 10 years. We just bought an extended warranty to make it through budget, and I'm not sure on the cost of it, but it was pretty high, and it's time to replace the existing machine. The base machine itself costs $58,000. The additional funds are going to be a 5-year high-priority maintenance plan and train the trainer, so on-site training for our deputies. to
Is that
utilize.
one to go in the courthouse?
Yes.
Can, another funding source is the new court facility fee. We've got 23,000? No. She's pulling it up. I budgeted the revenue. Court
It's
facility
90.
fund, 48,000.
48,000 in that fund?
Projected.
Okay, that's half of
Well,
the
that's
cost.
next year.
Yeah, right.
The fund balance,
Okay.
oh, I think she had to create the accounts. I hadn't added it in yet, but there is a fund balance too.
Okay.
So,
So
we could probably do the whole thing out of that fund, but it might be putting Peter before Paul. So I would probably do half out of this fund and half out of capital improvements.
Capital improvement. I think so.
Yeah,
I mean,
makes
that's a
sense.
priority,
Yeah.
definitely.
And we did check to make sure that with the renovations going on the front of the courthouse, that
Mhm.
this X-ray machine is doable regarding the size. It would
Mhm.
fit. And maybe the old one can be used somewhere, Brazos Center Expo maybe, because everything works. It's just the warranty's going out.
Correct.
It's not used for every day.
Mhm.
So.
And it may be something that we rotate out with the existing one depending on the age.
Well, and just so y'all are aware, it may be that accounting-wise, it's easier to put, I don't know where we stand on the courthouse security renovations project, but it might be able, might be easier to put the X-ray in one fund and the courthouse security renovations in another fund instead of halving it. It just kind of, I gotta check the statute to make sure.
Please do check on that.
I will.
And our last project is the Brazos County Special Response Vehicle Storage Building. Throughout the last several years, the court has been very gracious to us in providing us specialized equipment to our specialized divisions to do their job safely and more efficiently. Those vehicles and trailers right now are being parked outdoors. As we all know, this Texas heat is very brutal right now, and it takes its toll on these vehicles. Something else that we've encountered here recently is these hailstorms that have done a lot of damage. So we've looked into investing in a storage building that would house all these specialized vehicles and hopefully make them last a lot longer. Also, we also need the additional storage for a lot of other equipment that we house, because we house ATVs, generators, and things of that nature, boats, and we need the room. And again, this goes back to the growth that we've talked about over and over again. As we grow, we need the facilities in the room. We've had the land identified. It's a piece of property that is right off of Sandy Point Road, which is right next or adjacent to our low-risk facility. It's approximately 6 acres. What we proposed is a 40 by 100 storage building. I've heard there's other offices in the county that also have the need for storage, and I think this would be a great time for us to partner up with those individuals or those offices to try to go into this jointly. And the land is there. Again, we're only going to take up a small portion of it.
So do we own the land? That's
Yes.
6 acres? We
Yes,
own?
ma'am.
Yes, it's long and
Okay.
rectangular.
We won't have to pay. Okay.
Commissioners, what happened, and Judge, when this was presented by the Sheriff's Office, we started looking at it and going, okay, 60 by 100. We have other storage needs. I haven't seen, I think Records Management Desmond was doing a storage analysis. I haven't seen the results on that. But we thought that this might, especially because just-in-time ordering is proving in our supply chain problem time period to be an issue, that we thought about that this would be a great place for central receiving in the purchasing department. And so rather than maybe a 60 by 100, maybe 100 by 100 or 120 by 100, it's a long rectangular piece. And if we design it, the hardest part is going to be a dock for central receiving. But then central receiving could possibly take over, well, we'd have more like all the paper towels and the toilet paper and the paper and the things that we order in bulk.
Yeah.
Or could order more in bulk. There was discussion of mattresses. There was discussion of a lot of different
So
things.
there's a lot of possibilities.
From what I understand, this quote is non-conditioned space. So we put in as a suggestion $2 million to maybe do some conditioned space, because we don't want paper left in unconditioned space becomes, the copier can't pick it up, so we don't want to do that. But
Yeah.
it was a suggestion, and so we've plugged in $2 million. Charles is here to speak to the central receiving idea.
Y'all want to stand up and stretch or anything for a second? You're good? So, central receiving is something that central receiving is something that we've thought about for a while. There is economies of scale when you're able to order more products at one time and be able to get better pricing. Storage has always been an issue. It's an issue in every facility that we renovate or build new of. And as the Sheriff's Office spoke to, they have a need to protect this equipment. But theirs isn't the only one. I'm going to advocate on behalf of them as well as emergency management. We have assets that we keep in different locations, but unfortunately, when we go to mobilize those assets, because of the degradation due to weather and other elements, criminal activity, so forth and so on, they may not always be in a mode that they can be utilized immediately. And so we don't need to park everything in a garage, but some of our more important assets, we need to be able to protect them so that when we need them, then we have them available. They may not be mobilized very often. I don't know how often the sheriff's office uses, their boat or their command vehicle or the new investment, for whatever reason, the different things that they have to protect. They have their command trailer, stuff like that. But when they need it, they need to be able to use it once every 2 months or 3 months, or hopefully 6 years. We don't have to use it, but reality is they need to be able to get to it. So we're proposing a potential partially conditioned space and partially non-conditioned space, and then we would utilize it appropriately to house the different materials that we have. We would move surplus and auction out there, so that there's one central pickup. Vehicles would be over there as well after they're decommissioned by the fleet department, freeing up space over there for fleet to be able to have more flexibility with their space available.
Yeah, every time, well, I know from, and the health district might be interested too, because I know every time there's a FEMA event, a whole lot of equipment, whether it's PPE stuff or whatever, appears out of nowhere, and it comes here, and then if it doesn't get used,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
it stays, but nobody has a place to keep it. And a lot of that stuff is, it's useful, but it has to be maintained in a storage situation that's the right one, or it degrades
Right.
because of being exposed to the elements.
We
Okay,
have.
so
I'm sorry.
I believe the building has grown. We're gonna have to look at a larger size than that. But that's a good idea, very good idea.
And we kind of just plugged a number in. I thought originally that we currently used, I guessed, at about 1,500 square feet. I went and measured our surplus alone, and it's 2,500 square feet. That doesn't take into account the other rooms at the JP office over here that we already utilize to store PPE in. And then I went to facility services, some of the stuff that we've talked in conjunction with them about us taking over some of their responsibilities for storing paper and janitorial supplies and so forth that they buy in bulk and then distribute out on a daily or weekly basis. And they have already existing 10,000 square foot over there. So my original 2,500 foot guess is not necessarily sized appropriately. But I think through the discovery process of this and working with the Sheriff's Department, Emergency Management, Health Department, whoever, that we would be able to come to realize what space we need.
Let's come to a realistic,
Yes, ma'am.
because building too small is not gonna help us.
No, ma'am.
Well, we
Yeah.
are
You
talking
know.
about a metal building
Yeah,
Right,
plan-
the
plan
metal
versus
building.
converting a brick.
With-
Sounds like we need to plan the site and the construction
Activities.
to be expandable.
Very much so.
Yes.
And we,
And build the largest we can at this time. So if we need to expand, we can, but, we need to be realistic.
very much so.
And there's been a lot of equipment that was granted to the county that is sitting out in the hot air. We have a trailer that was outfitted for our drone that's also used for a mobile command that's sitting out in the heat. There is a license plate reader that was granted to us that's sitting out in the heat. Might not be used every day, but it's just sitting there. Rust and wear and tear of hell damages it. Burns hell. The storms.
So it sounds like we need a completely sealed, air-conditioned,
Not
Just
completely.
a portion of it, Commissioner. And
okay.
and
We're not getting too big.
yeah, and some of it can be handled with just proper ventilation with either, like the
That too.
high volume, low speed fans like they have at the Expo Center
That's
in
right.
some
Fans in the
areas of it.
walls,
Stuff like
Again,
that, proper
that-
ventilation and
Well,
venting.
we want to take all of that into
Same thing.
consideration, Charles. You're doing a
wanna
great
put it on
job
the list.
listing.
And then that way we can fit Paul's Bronco in there as well that he doesn't have. I meant to say Explorer earlier, I apologize.
What about my Porsche? When I buy
Where you park
it.
there, I don't know
When
what-
I
This would be
buy
his
it.
county provided.
And you haven't
vehicle.
taken me for a ride yet?
Well, I haven't bought it yet.
Oh, okay.
That's the dream.
Well, put me on the list.
Oh, you're first.
We just wanted to go ahead and put in a placeholder.
Yes.
No,
if nothing else.
I think we should.
Because there's no way we could get it done in a year anyway.
We certainly should.
Partnership.
That's right.
That's what
It
works.
is. It is.
We
It's
might train some
collaborative.
people in there, I don't know.
So we
Wait.
took that as a hard yes. We
With
appreciate your
respect.
dedication and commitment, and y'all are all looking lovely today. I forgot to mention that.
Glad to see you're optimistic, Charles.
You may get the award for, the DA's award for being most complimentary for this session of the budget.
Oh, I have some savings on that potential as well. For that Axon, the DA potentially, I don't know what the status of their funds are, but they may have some DA crime fund money that they may be willing to contribute to that.
Well,
Hey,
He's not here, he's
Is
gone.
this
so
where I
I'll
say
tell him
not
later.
here as much as the sheriff?
Before I conclude, I just want to take this time to recognize Lieutenant Bellingeri and all of the command staff at the Sheriff's Office Enforcement and Corrections. I believe this is probably the first time that they played a large role in the budget process and hosting several meetings and coming up with all these ideas that we presented. We couldn't have done it without them, so thank you to the command staff. And thank you to the judge and commissioners. Thank you.
thank you all.
One
We
thing
appreciate you.
on the additional patrol deputy vehicles, the 4 that are listed here, we were at, and then there are 2 vehicles for the, currently where we stand in positions is we had 2 that made it in for patrol, and there were 2 for
Right.
High priority.
jail, but then that they were out, the first 2 out would be, if we're putting a tournament together here, I guess the first 2 out would be the other patrol. So those 2 of those patrol deputy vehicles would be conditional upon those positions.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Technically, all the positions are conditional right now.
Yes, that's true.
All right, good afternoon, Judge and Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity we have to present our capital request to you this afternoon for the jail division. Thanks to Nina and Katie, we've been able to knock it down to one sole request, and that is the courthouse intercom replacement. Currently, the intercoms that we have in the courthouse, there's about 40 of them, and they're existing intercoms from the renovation of the courthouse facility. They do not tie into our security electronics or control board at the jail, and so they're on a separate PC. So if somebody rings the intercom at the courthouse, while we have inmates there and it's staffed, it goes to a computer down in the control station down at the courthouse. But if for some reason somebody was left behind or an emergency situation happened and there wasn't staffing at the courthouse, that intercom would ring to a separate computer at the back of the control room at the jail. So it's just not ideal for proper warning and notification of the staff, right? The other issue is that these intercoms are relatively expensive to replace. They're about $1,000, and from what I understand from Trevor, they're being replaced very frequently, and so over time the cost is pretty expensive. Currently, we're in the process of upgrading our security electronics as per our discussion last budget year. I'm sorry. No, security electronics being our control board, and we're funding it out of commissary funds. But it was in our budget request last year. So.
Did the judge hear that moving something out of the commissary?
Oh, we didn't miss it.